Hello everybody, this is your Digital Super Saiyan 3 back here with another video, and welcome to my May pay-per-view review. For the month of May, I chose to do WWE's Judgment Day from 2009, the very last Judgment Day pay-per-view. It took place in Chicago, Illinois, at the Allstate Arena. And it took place on May 17th, 2009. So yes, we're in Chi-Town. We're in Chicago. So yeah, this is the second time I think I've dove into a show that took place in Chicago. So yeah, we're in Chicago. And, well, it's actually a really solid show, actually. For SmackDown, you got Todd Grisham and Jim Ross calling the action for SmackDown. For Raw, you got Michael Cole and Jerry the King Lawler. And then for ECW, you got Matt Striker and I believe it was Josh Matthews? Yeah, I think it was Josh Matthews. Or something like that. I forgot who was calling. I forgot who was with Matt Striker. I don't know if it was Josh Matthews. Let me know in the comment section below who was calling the ECW title match for ECW. So yeah, this is the very last Judgment Day show. This was the last ever Judgment Day pay-per-view, and it would later get replaced by Over the Limit, and then later we would get shows like Payback. So this was a really solid show, like I said, and the theme song for the show was Rescue Me by Buck Cherry. Yes, that's right. The guys who sang the song Crazy Bitch are the ones who sang this song, and it's a really banger of a song. So okay, opening contest, we have Mr. Money in the Bank, CM Punk, taking on Umaga in the opening contest. You got the hometown boy, CM Punk, wearing this Chicago Bears-inspired inspired ring attire. He's wearing the Chicago Bears blue, orange, and white. And he's taking on Umaga here. And it's a really solid opening match. It was nothing too fancy. Of course, the crowd was behind CM Punk, and of course, they're not going to boo CM Punk in Chicago. Chicago is CM Punk's hometown. They're not going to boo the hometown boy, in his hometown of Chicago. They're not going to boo CM Punk in Chicago, because that's like sacrilege to boo CM Punk in his own hometown of Chicago. Anyway, I love the workmanship in this match. Punk and Umaga really had a solid working in this match. This came about because Umaga had, disrupted CM Punk's chance to cash in on the World Heavyweight Champion Edge after Punk beat Edge in a non-title match on SmackDown. Punk tried to become the World Champion, and Umaga prevented Punk from cashing in his Money in the Bank contract he won at WrestleMania 25. So, okay. Umaga defeats Punk after Punk had tried to go for various attempts to try to put Umaga in the go-to-sleep. He tried to hit the go-to-sleep on Umaga, but couldn't get Umaga up in the go-to-sleep. Umaga hit the Samoan drop and then the Samoan spike after Punk had kicked out of the Samoan drop. Really good match. Umaga ends up taking the victory. But like I said, it's a really solid match here. And then we get into we go backstage to Vicky Guerrero's dressing room. And, she's sitting in there with the Big Show and Chavo. And Vicky tells the Big Show, okay, they had medically cleared John Cena. Even though, despite the fact that John Cena is not 100%, and she tells the Big Show, we don't know who will step up next. And Big Show says, oh, I know who will step up. as he does plan to try to end John Cena's career later on in the night. And then, of course, Edge comes in, and the defending World Heavyweight Champion, decides to have a talk with Vicky in her office. Next up, we go to the ECW Championship match as our next match, as we have Christian defeating Jack Swagger. And this was just okay for what it was. Christian ends up getting the victory and showing why he's the veteran in this feud he's been having with Jack Swagger for the ECW title. He won the ECW title from Swagger at Backlash. And like I said, Christian ends up taking the victory. He ends up rolling up Swagger with a handful of tights. Referee does not see it. Referee doesn't see it. Christian is still your ECW champion. And then, of course, we head back to Vicky Guerrero's dressing room, and Edge is coming out, and Chavo's like, "What was that about?" And Edge is like, "What? Could a husband and wife not talk to each other?" And then Chavo's like, "Oh, so it's husband and wife now?" And Edge is like, "I have been focusing on defending my World Heavyweight Championship. There is some Italian idiot, making fun of your aunt, calling her a pig. Where were you on that, solving that problem, Chavo?" And then Edge calls Chavo a quote-unquote disappointment. "You are such a disappointment." Oh, shit. Yes. He up and calls Chavo a disappointment. Next up, we get John Morrison. John Morrison defeating the gold standard Shelton Benjamin with his good friend Charlie Haas, his world's greatest tag team partner, Charlie Haas, in his corner. And this was okay for what it was. This came about because Shelton Benjamin, he had been losing for weeks against Morrison. He has not been able to knock off Morrison, during the weeks leading up to the match here at Judgment Day. And, you have Haas coming in to run interference for Benjamin. It was like a bona fide handicap match. Morrison wins the match by hitting the Starship Pain. Starship Pain, 1, 2, 3. And John Morrison ends up beating Shelton Benjamin. It was alright for what it was. So it was an alright for what it was kind of match, just like the last one. Alright. Then we got The Miz coming out. The Miz is coming out, he had been for weeks trying to demand, attention from John Cena and everything. He has been talking about how he had been verbally insulting John Cena, trying to pick a fight with John Cena, despite the fact that John Cena is less than 100% and has got an angry giant to face later on that night. And then The Miz starts running down the Chicago Cubs because Alfonso Soriano from the Chicago Cubs was right there, front row, near the right behind the SmackDown announce table. The Miz is talking all that kind of smack to him. He's insulting the Chicago Cubs about how they are losers and how they will never win a championship. Then out comes Santino Marella, and the crowd, they pop for Santino. And then Santino calls The Miz a jackass after he called Vicky Guerrero a pig, and of course it leads to a brawl between Miz and Santino. They get into it. Miz gets the upper hand and then DDTs Santino. And then as the Miz gets out of the ring, out comes Chavo Guerrero in his nice white collared shirt and black pants. He comes down and he gives Santino a frog splash. He starts beating down Santino after the Miz just hit the DDT on Santino Marella, and Chavo just comes out to pick the bones. Alright, so now we go backstage, and we got Josh Matthews interviewing Chris Jericho in the lead-up to his Intercontinental Championship match against Intercontinental Champion Rey Mysterio. And, he's talking about how he's been screwed over by Teddy Long, who favors guys like Rey Mysterio, and how he's just pulling the conspiracy theory card, mind you. And then he says there isn't going to be any 619 tonight. You may chant it, but there isn't going to be a 619. And then we get into the Intercontinental title match as champion Rey Mysterio defeats Chris Jericho in a real banger match, and a really, really great match this was. This was a great match for the Intercontinental Championship. So definitely one of the best Intercontinental title matches. Not gonna say one of the all-time greatest, but definitely very underrated. I mean, Jericho and Rey, during their series of matches in 2009, this felt like this should have won Rivalry of the Year or Feud of the Year. I mean, yeah, they would have their match at Extreme Rules, and then they would end their feud at the Bash 2009. They would have their big blow-off at the Bash. And yes, don't worry, I will review the Bash 2009 later this year in July, so don't worry, wrestling fans. July, I got you covered with the Bash 2009. Spoilers. But yeah, it was some great workmanship between Rey and Jericho in this match. Rey manages to hit the 619. There were so many great counters in this matchup. It was a really good match here between Rey Mysterio and Chris Jericho. And Rey Mysterio ends up retaining his Intercontinental Championship. Now we're all set for our next match, and it is for the WWE Championship, as champion Randy Orton defends against Batista. Batista seeks revenge on Randy Orton for putting him out for 4 months, costing Batista 4 months of his career. Batista was not able to compete at WrestleMania 25 because of this. He was out for 4 months after a sinister punt kick back in December. And now Batista not only gets his chance to get his hands on Randy Orton, but a chance to try to win Randy Orton's WWE Championship. And, of course, this was an okay match for what it was. Randy got himself disqualified after slapping the referee. Of course, he slapped the referee. And, of course, the match ends with or shall I say it ends after a beatdown with Legacy coming out. Rhodes and DiBiase, they come out to beat down Batista. It's 3-on-1 as Randy Orton, Cody Rhodes, and Ted DiBiase Jr. are all beating down Batista. And then you hear the music of Ric Flair. Ric Flair runs out to help out Batista. He comes out to help out Batista. And Batista and Ric Flair fight off the trio of Legacy. They run off Legacy. And Legacy, they're chased out of the arena, but Randy Orton still retains the WWE Championship. Next up, we get into our next match. It's the wounded John Cena, who's less than 100%, mind you, after he was chokeslammed off the stage at Backlash and put through a massive freaking searchlight by the Big Show. I mean, his ribs are busted up. His kidneys are busted up. You see John Cena wounded. Yeah, he's wrestling wounded here. You have a wounded John Cena who still somehow manages to defeat the Big Show and manages to put him up in the AA, mind you. So you had a wounded John Cena still managed to beat a fresh Big Show after the Big Show had promised to try to end John Cena's career, and the Big Show was unsuccessful at that. Cena manages to hit the AA and puts the 1-2-3 and gets the victory over the Big Show. Now we get into it. Our main event for the World Heavyweight Championship. As the number one contender, Jeff Hardy, who defeated the likes of Chris Jericho, Kane, and Rey Mysterio in a fatal four-way match on SmackDown, earned his opportunity to challenge the World Heavyweight Champion, Edge. Now, Edge, had talked about how he and Jeff broke into the business together, how they both came up around the same time, and how both had various opportunities. But Edge said, there's one major difference. I made the most of my opportunities. But you, Jeff, you're a choke artist. You squandered them. But then Edge has to say, correct me if I'm wrong, but when I became WWE Champion, I beat a punk named the Rated R Superstar, Edge. And of course, now we get into this match, and it's the main event for the World Heavyweight Championship. And out of the two world title matches, out of the 3 world title matches we got, because there was the ECW title, the WWE Championship, and the World Heavyweight Championship, this match definitely was a banger here. This was definitely a banger between Edge and Jeff Hardy. We've seen how Edge and Jeff Hardy have worked together, in ladder matches. But, seeing them actually work a regular professional wrestling match, without weapons involved, this was a really good match. Like, there were so many memorable moments of this match, like Edge spearing Jeff Hardy, like, just cutting Jeff Hardy off, like, Jeff Hardy was, like, walking the security wall like a tightrope, trying to get at Edge, but Edge, cut him off at the pass, mind you, and then, of course, that wasn't enough to put away Jeff Hardy, and then we had later on a run-in by Matt Hardy, who comes in, he was in the crowd, and he clocked Jeff in the back of the head with a cast around his arm, because Matt had a cast around his arm. And even that didn't put Jeff Hardy away, but what ended up putting Jeff Hardy away was a top rope execution, as Edge had stopped Jeff from doing the swanton, as Edge had hit the execution from the top rope. 1, 2, 3, and Edge still is your World Heavyweight Champion. And thus, Judgment Day is over. The very last Judgment Day pay-per-view has ended. And yes, for the last Judgment Day pay-per-view, it actually was a solid show. I mean, I would say this Judgment Day is actually one of the better Judgment Day pay-per-views I've ever watched. I definitely feel like it's definitely on par with the likes of Judgment Day 2000. Judgment Day 2000 that happened like 9 years prior. That happened 9 years earlier, so I definitely think this would probably be a great Judgment Day show. I think I also did enjoy Judgment Day 2005, so I would say 2009 is definitely probably number 3 or number 4. If I were to do a list of my favorite Judgment Day pay-per-views, I would rank 2009 probably in that vicinity of 3 or 4. But yeah, anyway, this has been your Digital Super Saiyan 3, and next time in June, I will be reviewing WWE's One Night Stand from 2008. See ya!